But I think a more likely thing is quite often decisions are thrust upon us, and we have suddenly have to decide, do I take action right now? An irrevocable decision to take an action that moves it from all of the thought and planning into actually doing. A while ago, I was talking with a friend, and she was recommending a course of action that I take. And I made the comment, yeah, I need to do that. And she responded that, the words I need to actually mean, hey, that's a good idea, but I'm not actually going to do anything about it. And I got to think about that and realize how true that is. How many times do I say, I need to read that book? I need to write that list. I need to start that project. And it comes down to, yeah, it's a great idea. It's a great thought, but nothing's ever going to come from it. So how do we move from that great idea we're not going to use into something we actually do? Now, every project, every goal we have, every major achievement that we want starts out, as we know from Napoleon Hill, with that desire, that faith, that belief that we can do things, knowing what it is we really want in our life. But it has to move at some point from something up in our head that we're just kind of moving around with or growing into something that becomes true action. And I think there's a definite line when it goes from an idea to going into action, and that's decision. When we truly make a decision that we are going to do something. And I think most of us in our lives have those moments where that sudden flash of inspiration, that sudden realization that something can actually happen and be true. Now, sometimes those things are just kind of almost random. My favorite author is a man named Haruki Murakami, is a Japanese novelist, and he talks about his decision moment. He had a day off and he went to watch a baseball game. And as one of the players hit the ball and he heard the crack of the ball as the bat hit it with the sun shining and the green grass. And as soon as that sound of the ball hitting the bat or the bat hitting the ball reached his ear, a thought popped into his head. I can write a novel. And that was a deciding moment for him. He made that decision at that moment out of the blue that he was going to become a novelist and write a novel. And he went home and did that and turned out to be enormously successful. Once in a while, a decision might come upon us like that. But I think that's a very rare occasion where it just something we'd never thought of suddenly hits us and we decide to do that. But I think a more likely thing is quite often decisions are thrust upon us. And we have suddenly have to decide, do I take action right now? An irrevocable decision to take an action that moves it from all of the thought and planning into actually doing. And I think the great example for that is actually a man named Ben Sliney. Ben Sliney was the director of the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. His first day on the job just happened to be September the 11th in 2001. On his very first day in the job, as the planes hit the Twin Towers, he had to make a decision. It was forced upon him. He must make a decision right then, his first day on the job, what to do with air traffic for the remainder of at least that day and who knows how long going forward. I think that must have been an incredibly difficult decision for him, having well, he was experienced in the field, but first day in that job. First day having to take control of the FAA and make the most monumental decision in probably most of our lifetimes. Let me speak that again. I apologize. In our lifetime was that decision to ground all of the planes on September 11th. That was a decision that he probably never planned to make before, but I'm sure he had researched. I'm sure he knew about that. He had studied about it, read about it, knew what his options would be. And then when that moment came that those planes struck and he had to take control of that, it was no longer an idea in his head. It was no longer something to study and think about. It was something that he had to make a decision to take an action right at that moment. And he was able to do that. And we don't know all the details of what happened, but probably many, many lives were saved because of that decision. So sometimes, again, decisions may just be out of the blue. Many times they're just thrust upon us, and we must make a decision at that point. I'm going to say the third type of decision is when it builds up to a point where we realize the decision has to be made. And I think the great example of this is one of the heroes of modern times for us, Miss Rosa Parks, who struggled through many challenges and the unfairness of the laws and what was going on in society in the 1950s, and reached a point where she knew that she could not continue the way she was going. And she had to make a decision to do something differently. And one day, as she was sitting on the bus, for those of you who aren't aware of her story, she was an African American woman who at the time would be required by law to give up her seat if a white person came on the bus. That's what happened. She had had a long day at work. She was tired. A white person came on the bus and expected her to get up and stand so that he could sit down. She refused to get up. This sparked a huge controversy, sparked a boycott of the Montgomery bus system that lasted over a year and really was a pivotal starting moment in the civil rights movement in the United States. She came to that decision, and I'm honestly not sure if that was something she planned for a while. I think what I've read of hers is she just realized that it had gone too far, and action now had to be taken. That decision, again, to go from thoughts and ideas and plans to make a concrete decision to move to the action phase. And as a result of her making that decision, the United States has become such a better place, a more equal place. And the civil rights, the human rights of so many people have become just incredibly better because of her decision to, I was about to say to stand up and take an action, but her decision to sit down and take an action. And I think that's one of the greatest metaphorical standing up by her sitting that we have in our lives today. So a thanks to her for her being really a hero because of that decision, that making a concrete decision. And I'm going to finish with the fourth way of making a decision is something that is planned out, built up, figured out ahead of time. Excuse me. A decision that has gone through all of the planning stages, and the timing of that decision is determined ahead of time. But it still is a point where a single decision sparks that difference, that definite line, that demarcation between thought and idea and action moving forward. And that would be President Abraham Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address. When he gave the Gettysburg Address, that marked a definitive change in how and why the Civil War was fought in the United States. He brought out at that time that we are fighting the Civil War not just to preserve the Union, which had been the idea before then, but as a matter of civil rights and human rights. And he made the comment that the soldier's sacrifice is to bring about a new birth of freedom. And that was him bringing out the importance of ending slavery in the United States. And that became the purpose of the Civil War. Because Abraham Lincoln planned out, knew what he wanted, he met with his counselors, he discussed these things, and he knew that the outcome of this war would have something far greater than just preserving the United States as one nation instead of being split into two. It meant the freedom of millions upon millions of people going forward in this country. It meant something far greater than it had meant before then, something that would resonate around the world, literally, as an end of the country with I think the highest amount of slavery at that time. So Abraham Lincoln's decision to use that point, that really terrible battle, that huge sacrifice that so many of those soldiers had gone through, so many people who were died, injured, and wounded at that time. And he made the decision that that was the point he would bring about to explain to people why we were going through these sacrifices, and that their sacrifices had a great meaning. And that was a point that a lot of people entered into the Civil War or joined up on the Union side to fight against slavery to bring about the freedom of people. Those decision points that people make, those are the exact moments that something goes from the idea, from we should do this, I think I should do that, I know I need to do that, into I am doing that. This is now happening. It is really, it's an irrevocable, sorry, I say decision is the definitive moment where an irrevocable action begins. It is that moment in time that everything changes, whether it's a goal that we begin to in our life, whether it's losing weight or eating healthier, whether it's spending more time with family, whether it's writing a book or starting a business or expanding upon something, running for a political office, ending an injustice in the world, or working to, truly make a difference. Any of those things we do require that definitive moment where a decision is made and it is no longer possible to go back to yeah, I need to do that. And instead, it becomes a point that this is happening. I will do this. I am doing this to I have done this. And we see the result of it. So I want to close with that. Everything in Napoleon Hill has talked about up until this point takes place in our mind. It's our think and grow rich. It's the think part of it. It's the building up to it. It's the planning. It's the desires. It's the gaining knowledge. It's the preparation. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where it actually begins. When we make that decision, that is a line between a thought and the action that we must take.